Welcome to House Talk, with videos that'll provide maintenance tips unique to Trilogy at Vistancia Homes. With your host, Doug Bowman. Hello and welcome. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about water softeners. We're going to be looking at the pros and cons of ownership, help you determine whether yours is working correctly, what's the right hardness setting. We're going to show you a simple way to determine what faucets are softened and which ones are not in your house. And then we'll finish with some maintenance tips that'll keep yours working correctly. So here's some of the pros and cons. When a water softener is operating properly, they extend the life of major appliances like your clothes washer, your dishwashers, your water heaters. It keeps corrosion out of your pipes. It helps soap lather, and it just feels better on your skin. The cons are that you need to own and maintain a water softener. The water that's supplied by the city of Peoria is extremely hard. It's well water, high in calcium, high in minerals, and it needs to be treated so it doesn't damage your appliances. One of the components a water softener protects is your water heater. It protects the metal from being corroded, but in the process of doing so, it erodes your water heater's anode rods faster. And lastly, as with any pressurized water component, you're introducing the possibility of leaks through seals, O-rings, mechanical joints, threads, and that's always a risk you need to be prepared for. Take a look at these pictures. Chances are good that when your house was built, it probably didn't have a water softener in it. They weren't required for occupancy. The builders provided these stub pieces that stuck out in the wall so that you could use these as a tie-in point for a future installation. Because over the years, so many contractors and so many suppliers and so many different brands of water softeners have been installed, there doesn't seem to be any kind of common mode failure between them all because of the wide variety of installations. That's a good thing. So we'll spend our time talking about how to determine whether or not it's properly working, whether it's set right, and some maintenance recommendations. So here's some signs that your water softener may need some service. First, not enough lather. If your water softener is not performing properly, this will be one of the first signs. Laundry problems. Washing clothes in hard water can make them seem stiff and scratchy. Be leery here because the use of fabric softener can mask hard water. Next, your water tastes different. Hard water definitely has a different taste than soft water. And lastly, if your water softener is not removing the calcium from the water, you'll start to see it show up on your faucets and shower heads as a white crusty film. This is definitely a sign that your water softener needs to be looked at. One of the most simple reasons that your water softener may be underperforming is that it just may not have the right hardness setting. So let's take a look what that setting should be for someone in the Trilogy area. As I said earlier, our water comes from the city of Peoria, and for Vistancia, our water is primarily well water, high in calcium and minerals. Every year, the city of Peoria is required to publish an annual water quality report and make it available to its customers. The report is broken down by area, with Vistancia being one of those areas as shown here in the pink. One of the specific inspection criteria is water hardness, and as seen here, you can see the water hardness for Vistancia is between 14 and 16 grains per gallon, with the average being 15. I would recommend starting with a setting of 14 and then adjust it up one number each month until you get the performance you feel comfortable with. So, how do you know what fixtures and faucets and appliances in your house are getting softened water versus hard water? Well, here's a simple test that you can perform, but first let's talk about how a water softener gets its water. Looking behind the water softener, you've probably got a 2-valve configuration similar to this. When the valve handles are in line with the pipe, water comes in through the water softener and then exits out to the faucets and fixtures. When the valve handles are turned perpendicular to the pipe, water is prevented from going through the water softener and all of the water bypasses around it. Some people will close these valves when they leave for the summer to prevent the risk of a water softener leak. Now the trick to determining which faucets and fixtures get softened water is to do this. Just close one of the valves, leaving the other one open. This will block flow going through the water softener or the bypass valve. No flow will go through at all. With the valve handles in this configuration, you can now go around the house and open all of the valves and faucets that you've got and write down which ones have pressure and which ones don't. The first one will have a little pressure as it bleeds down, but after that, all of the valves that you open up that have no pressure on them at all will be water softened, and the ones that do have water pressure are the ones that are hard water. I did this for my house, and here's what I found. The first observation is that anything that had a hot water tap was softened. Next, anything that fed a major appliance like the clothes washer or the dishwasher, those were softened as well. Next, all the water used in your bathrooms is softened, which makes sense since this is where most of the suds comes in contact with your skin. Locations that were hard water are the outside faucets and your irrigation system. Now my kitchen sink was a little bit unique. The hot water was softened as I expected, but the cold water was hard. I also found that my ROV, my reverse osmosis system, and my ice maker on the refrigerator were both originally fed from hard, but the ROV actually removed the minerals, and it was soft, but not because it went through the water softener. Now let's talk about some of the maintenance items that you can perform to maintain your water softener. First, we talked about the water setting, making sure that the hardness grain setting is between 14 and 16. Too high of a setting is going to erode your water heater anode, causing premature failure, so you really don't want to go any higher than you have to. Next, you want to buy high-quality brand name salt. The cheaper brands end up having a lot of residue that works its way to the bottom of the brine tank, where it gets sucked up into the water softener, clogging valves and clogging filters. Next, one of the most important things you can do is to maintain the proper level in your brine tank or your salt tank. Maintain your salt level between 1/4 full and 3/4 full. Don't go any lower and don't go any higher. If your salt level gets too low, the water softener will stop producing. And if you maintain your level too high and then continue to keep it high, you run the risk of having salt bridging or salt mushing occurring. A salt bridge occurs when a hard crust layer of salt forms in the brine tank and creates a void between the water and the salt. If this occurs, you need to break through this bridge with a broom handle and break up that crusty layer. Salt mushing occurs when the salt breaks down into small granules that don't fully dissolve. If this happens, it may clog the water intake valve at the bottom of the salt tank. If you see this kind of mush in the bottom of the salt tank, you'll need to empty the tank and clean it out. Even if you don't see this, it's a good practice to clean out your brine tank about every 2 years. There are also several commercially available water softener cleaners that you can use to keep the performance of your water softener up. These are available at Home Depot or Lowe's. You should inspect your water softener to see whether or not there's a 9-volt backup battery. We don't get that many power outages here, but you don't want your battery terminals getting corroded. And the last item on the maintenance list is to make sure that your head cover is in place and latched. This plastic cover covers most of the gears, the seals, the O-rings, and most of the joints that can potentially fail. If there's going to be a leak on your water softener, it's most likely going to come out of the head, and you want this cover in place to make sure it diverts the water downward and doesn't spray it all throughout your garage. So what do snowbirds need to know about water softeners before they leave for the summer? The day before you leave, you should force your water softener to do a regeneration cycle. That way you'll have a clean resin bed while you're gone. Next, if you have a shutoff valve that isolates the water just to your house faucets, you don't have to do anything else for the softener because there won't be any water supply to regenerate or cause a leak. Not every house has one of these valves. Be sure you don't accidentally close your whole house valve because you'll shut off water to your sprinklers and your irrigation system. If you don't have one of these isolation valves outside and can't shut off the water to the house faucets, then you should align the water softener valves to the bypass position, as we showed earlier in this video. Without water pressure, your water softener wouldn't be able to do a regeneration cycle even if it called for one. Either way, you don't need to unplug your softener. You would just have to needlessly reprogram it when you returned. So here's what we talked about today. Because of the wide variety of manufacturers and suppliers of water softeners, we're not all experiencing the same types of problems. We talked about how to detect whether or not your water softener is working properly. what the right setting is based on Trilogy and the City of Peoria Water Quality Report. And we talked about maintenance tips, with the most important tip being cycling your brine tank between 1/4 full and 3/4 full, and not being tempted to top it off all the way full and keeping it there. If you like this video, you may like these other videos I've done, specifically about Trilogy homes. Thanks again, and if you like this video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.